Okay, you guys, let's do this. It's going to be so professional. Like, so professional. Here we go. Welcome to the Life Support Podcast with your hosts, Michele VanDusen and June Colson, a couple of clean comedians who support each other and others through comedy's wacky and winding roads. I hope you're ready. Get set. Let's go. Since podcasts have a catchy tune, we wrote this song for Michele and June. Clean comedians are best friends too. Oh, it's so good. And you never know what they'll say or do. Here we go, sing with me on Life Support, with Michele, who's really short. We'll have a ball, with June, who's really tall. They have fun, interviewing comedians on Life Support, with Michele, who's really short. Now it's time to start Life Support.
The Life Support Podcast is brought to you by the Hot Breath Comedy Network.
Wow, give yourself a round of applause.
Welcome to the award-winning Laugh Support Podcast. I'm your host, June Colson, here with Michele, with one L, Rhonda Colson, Corey's friend, Trisha's sister. Do not call me Shelly, Michele VanDusen. What's up, Buttercup?
Hey, what you doing? I'm wearing the Pappy's Bakery shirt that I got from Texas, and this is one of their cake ball thingies, so I thought I would just bring that and some cookies just to show that I didn't eat all of them. So, boom, there you go.
I think you're just showing off your willpower, because I have fully confessed to my inability to be around anything that's, well, I can do like cookies and stuff, that's fine. But if it's chocolate, if it's anything chocolate, then forget about it. It's not safe in my presence. So, but the Pappy's, now that is the bakery that Ross, your husband Ross, his family owns that bakery. And
Yep.
Where is it located?
That's Calvert, Texas.
Calvert, Texas.
Yep.
So if I'm ever in Calvert, Texas, I'm going by to check out that 14,000 million trillion layer chocolate cake.
So good. So good. Hey, so I heard that you took Hotdog, your daddy, to the doctors yesterday. How'd that turn out?
You know, it's hot dogs, so it's always something interesting. I do have in front of me, though, real quick. I found at his house. I have to show you. This was just so sweet. So one of his family members, Mr. and Mrs. Hicks, the Hicks family, I believe they're cousins of my dad's. They sent him a Christmas card this year, but look on the back, Michele, it says, "God bless Laugh Support too."
Do they listen to us?
Sweet. So apparently my dad's family is listening to us, and they're in Florida. So hello to the Hicks, and thank you guys for listening to the Laugh Support Podcast. So yeah, I took Dad to the doctor yesterday. He had several tests that he had to have run. For anybody, if you're new to listening to the podcast, I have a dad. His name is Hotdog. He is a bit of a legend, and and he's also a whole lot of trouble, and he earned the name Hotdog for a reason. And yesterday, Michele, they were doing like blood work and a CT scan and chest x-rays, which sounds like, oh my gosh. But this man has cheated death like 45 billion times, like caught himself on fire. He's beat cancer. He's had 3 heart attacks. He's had, like quadruple bypass surgery, all that. So he's doing these tests, and he is one of the funniest people I know. And we're cutting up, we're laughing in the waiting room as we're going back and forth. He's making jokes about the port they put in his arm, and I noticed this man to my left is like paying attention. He's really paying attention to me and my dad, and you can see he's kind of amused. So it's not the happiest place to be, and my dad and I are just goofy together. But he wanted me to change his screensaver on his iPhone. And I say iPhone lightly. I think it's like an iPhone -1. I'm not sure. Like it's not even. My brother gave it to him, and it has. It was my niece's actually. So he gets like the teenage girl daily Bible verse every day. My dad does on his phone. But all of a sudden, he's scrolling through, and this extremely inappropriate, because he's 72 years old. His phone's cranked up as high as it'll go. This inappropriate Cardi B song starts playing, right? Cardi B, like foul language, every word you would never want to be blasting in the presence of strangers is coming from my dad's phone. And I'm like leaping over a chair to get to it. I get it away. I'm like turning it off. I'm like, what are you doing? What was that? And he goes, I don't know. One of the kids put Tiki Talkers or something on my phone. And I was like, TikTok, Dad? Why do you have TikTok? He goes, I don't know. And I'm like, you're grounded. You don't know how to use technology. We cannot play Cardi B in the waiting room. And I look over, and that elderly gentleman who had been watching me and Dad, he's sliding out of his chair. He's laughing so hard. And I go, you see what I'm dealing with? You see what I'm dealing with right here? It's always an adventure. So yeah, watch out. Hotdog does not have a TikTok, account or anything.
Gosh, he would get so many followers. Seriously, if you set him up with a TikTok, he would. Yeah, so many. Yeah, he could get a mansion. I'm just saying. Like in one day, he'd be so.
You think so? Well, I did start doing a video series with him yesterday, or I'm going to do a video series where I'm doing Hotdog, Is It True? And I'm asking questions because a lot of people, unless you meet the man, which Michele, you have met the legend. Yeah. Then a lot of times I think people think I'm kidding about some of the stuff that my dad did. So it's just basically little clips that go, Hotdog, is it true? And one of the first questions, and you'll have to see later what the answer is, Hotdog, is it true that you used to assemble bombs? So we'll find out later if that's true. But hey, listen, I'll tell you what's true right now. Yes. What is true is that we have a phenomenal guest on the show. Yes, can't believe that we snagged this guy that he agreed to come be with us today on the Laugh Support podcast, but he is here. So let's get to it, Michele. Who is on the show today?
Okay, so our guest today tours the country performing at comedy clubs, theaters, corporate events, churches. He's been on the Grand Ole Opry. He has a dry bar comedy special that's uber important. You can catch him on Laugh USA, on Sirius XM Radio, or he's one of the hosts now on Nateland Podcast. So let's welcome to the Laugh Support podcast from his car, Brian Bates. Woo, woo, woo,
woo! Hey, guys. Good to be here. Hey.
Well, hello, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm sitting in my car because I have a baby and she's asleep in the house and it's kind of crazy in there. So the only way I can get some peace and quiet to do this is to come out and sit in my car.
Oh, I thought you're ready to get back on the road again, like, because you're on so many different tours. Like, aren't you like touring with like Leanne Morgan or something right now?
Well, I have. I've done a lot of shows with Leanne. Not at the moment, but yeah, I mean, I do a lot of shows with Leanne. I'm sure I'll have more coming up down the road. So yeah, Leanne's great.
Very, very
That's
cool.
That's pretty awesome. Michele and I are moms, so we definitely can relate to. Sometimes I just went to my car just to scream. I would just go into the door because I raised two boys, and they were everything that you could expect of raising two boys. So yeah, Michelle's got the screaming goat. Go ahead. I saw you grab it. That's what it sounded like, Brian.
My wife needs that.
That was my Christmas gift to Michele this year. So speaking of gifts, I don't know if you know this or not, Michele, but I've been invited to Brian's birthday party the last couple of years.
What?
I've been at his birthday.
Wow. Fancy, fancy. Look at you being all friends.
Everybody actually is invited because he usually does this show at Zany's around his birthday. And I tell people that Brian Bates invites me to his birthday and I show up. But Brian,
you pay to go to his birthday.
Actually, I have to pay anytime I talk to him. It's just a thing. No,
right. That's right.
So, Brian, I've had the opportunity to get to meet you through the Christian Comedy Association. I've been to several shows that you've been on, and your events at Zany's Comedy Club.
Yes.
You are the Nateland podcast. Michele mentioned that. I think that one of the things that comedians definitely it's a comedy family. People are close, people talk. And one thing that I think about the Nateland podcast is everyone on that panel. You have Aaron Weber, Dusty Slay, obviously Nate Bargatze, and yourself, all have a reputation for being just kind and supportive people. And that's not always the norm. That's not always the norm in comedy. Anybody who's done comedy, it's not always a thing. But you guys clearly, the title of our show is Laugh Support. You guys clearly support each other. You have this podcast together. And I know you've been doing comedy for a little while. So we'd like to kind of back up and ask you, when you think about your beginnings of doing stand-up comedy, who was somebody who was Laugh Support to you, Brian?
Well, I have to say, without a doubt, I probably wouldn't even be doing comedy if it wasn't for someone that you guys know very well, Rick Roberts.
Oh,
Mm.
love Rick.
So my dad passed away in December of 2006, and I was very down and depressed. And in January of 2007, the next month, I took Rick Roberts' stand-up comedy class, and I just did it for fun, just to something to keep my mind, just something to enjoy. And I really had no aspirations of being a stand-up comedian. It was a 4-week class, and I'd never met a stand-up comedian. In my mind, they were all kind of unapproachable, can't really connect with them, which is, as you guys know, very true in a lot of cases. But Rick Roberts is such a good, down-to-earth Christian man, and we, immediately bonded, and he was such an encouragement. And I've seen other stand-up comedy classes, different places, and I haven't participated in them, but I know who the teacher is. I don't think I would have kept going in comedy if it wasn't for Rick Roberts. So I feel like God put Rick right in my path for that to happen.
Yeah, we've had several of our guests mention Rick. Several of our guests have taken his classes, and he's been very supportive. And we've done an episode. He actually was our finale guest on our very first podcast. So even willing to come on the podcast like you. And so to have somebody as you're stepping into comedy as kind and as encouraging and knowledgeable. I watched him last night at the Huckabee show do crowd warm up, and just brand new stuff like that had to do with what happened this week in the news. He came out and rocked that. So what an awesome person to be there for you as you began. So that was one of the first people that was there for you. So then you decide, okay, I'm going to do this. Did you immediately start finding other people at the same level as you, or were you able to find somebody that was a little more advanced? How did that go?
Yeah, well, Rick has been the one steady all the way through, still is to this day, a great mentor to me, someone I still lean on. But along the way, at first it was just the people who I took the class with. So we were all on the same level. We were all starting out together. And then along the way, I started meeting different people in my life that really kind of helped me out. And one of the people that I really wanted to work with, because people kept mentioning to me and how he does clean comedy, and I was so familiar with him, was Henry Cho. And for the first few years in comedy, I'm like, I got to meet this guy, because I had friends who knew him. We both live in Nashville, and I knew he did clean comedy. And it took a while, but I finally got to host for him at Zany's. And, I do clean comedy. He does clean comedy. He needs clean openers. So we kind of hit it off. And, I've been working with him off and on now for over 10 years. And he been a big influence as well. And so he was like one of the next people to help open some doors for me, get me in. And then, there's been a lot of people along the way, but some of the main ones were Rick, Henry. And then when I met Nate Bargatze, Nate was living in New York. I never knew Nate when he lived here in Nashville, but he was living in New York. He would come home a lot on the holidays to visit family. We met while he was home visiting. Again, he does clean comedy. We have a lot in common. Just we're both Vanderbilt fans. There's not many Vanderbilt sports fans out there. And we just became friends, and then stayed in touch, and I would do shows with him whenever I could. But he was living in New York and then LA, so I couldn't do a ton of shows with him. But right when I quit my job and went full-time into comedy in December of 2014, Nate moved back to Nashville. And so that kind of worked out great. It wasn't planned that way, just kind of worked out. And so then he could start taking me on the road with him, which he did. And so he's taken me on so many shows. And then Now I do the podcast with him, so that's been a great thing. Opened so many doors. So those are just three of the guys that have helped me out. Leanne Morgan, who you mentioned, she's such a great influence. We're both in our 50s, so we have that in common, and we're kind of from the same generation. Her crowds are my age, so she's been another just good Christian woman that's been a great influence. Angela Johnson, another person that's been a big influence on me. So I've had so many.
Yeah, every one of those are pretty heavy hitters that you're mentioning. These are some pretty just skilled and accomplished comedians that God has lined you up with. And I think that, whenever we see a guest that has had that caliber, a caliber of people come in line with them, it's because, that you definitely bring a light to other people. So God's moving you along in circles and areas where you can have a broader influence. Don't you think, Michele?
Yes, absolutely. So I was wondering, with all the people that you've been meeting and you've been working with, have you had that same chance to reach behind you and bring another comedian that's like, hey, let me open a door for you, or let me introduce you this way? Have you had that chance to mentor somebody a little, just starting out in their comedy career?
No, I don't really want to help other people. I just want other people to help. I don't have time for that nonsense. Just trying to make the big bucks, People below me can't help me out. No, I try. I hope so. I try to, help people out when I can. And I haven't had the opportunity to, like a lot of these people I just mentioned, they like took me on the road with them and let me open for them. And I haven't had the opportunity to do that, but I'm hoping to get to a point in my career soon where maybe I can do some of that, where I can, have some people open for me and take them on the road. But I'm not quite there yet where I have that influence or power, but I certainly hope, and I think I give people advice and when I can, and I'm trying to be quick not to give too much advice, because I don't know what I'm doing either. None of us really know what we're doing. We're just all trying to figure it out, and everybody has their own path. And look at, you guys know Lee Harden. Lee Harden's doing great. He took his own path and found his own way, and he's out there getting in all these shows. And there's no one way to do it, but
right.
I guess the common approach that I try to give people is a little time and kindness. That's something, no matter who you are, you want. And as far as those heavy hitters, you're right. That also goes to show that in contemporary or mainstream, I guess, comedy, especially in comedy clubs, there's just very few clean comedians. So if you meet a clean comedian, there's a good chance that, you can stand out in those comedy clubs, because there's few of them, as you guys know.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say, anytime that I've spoke to Brian or approach him or talk to him, the fact that you're on the podcast today says a lot, that I am somebody new in the journey, or newer in the journey of comedy. And I've never felt like I was a less than in your presence, even though I'm fully aware your accomplishments are beyond anything I've done. You're always very kind to people. So I absolutely appreciate that. Talking about clean comedy and how there's, not as many people doing that. One thing I think it says is all these names that you're talking about, Henry Cho and Leanne and Angela and Nate and all of those, is I think there's this misunderstanding that people can't be financially successful as a clean comic, when this is obviously a career path that they've chosen, and they've stayed true to what their convictions are, and they've done really well. But I wondered, have you ever had a time in the journey where you felt like you had no laugh support, where you were kind of feeling alone in the journey, or maybe just a little frustrated or lost a little?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm sure there have been. We all get frustrated, and we all have bumps in the road where We're like, oh, what am I doing? Should I even keep trying this? And, you know, I still bomb all the time. There's bad shows out there and you get frustrated. You're like, I should just quit and go sell Mary Kay or something. I don't know. But I have been very fortunate. Like I said, Rick Roberts, right out of the gate, first person I met. And so Rick's always been very supportive. And then I've always had people come along, at the right time. I'm sure there have been periods where I'm like, boy, I really need a life support, somebody that I can lean on that could give me some good advice or help me along the way. But in saying that, I know I've been very blessed and very fortunate to have some good friends, good support along almost the entire journey for me.
Wow. Oh wait, I had a great question too. It was like so amazing. So you've talked, when you've been doing all these tours and stuff, and I know we mentioned that you're a father.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like any? Have you set up any kind of guidelines as to like, I'll only be gone this long for my family without seeing them again, or have you taken your family with you on any of the tours? How does that work as being a family man?
Well, I haven't taken them yet. My daughter's 10 months old, so it's all pretty new to me, even being a dad. And so we're still trying to figure some of that out. I haven't actively turned down work, but I'm pretty busy these days, gone most weekends. So if I have a weekend like this coming weekend, I'm off, and I'm okay with that. I don't strive just to find any gig that just to be out doing it. I don't feel that need. I feel like I should be here with my family. It is a balance because you got to work, but I try to. Well, again, I haven't turned down anything, but if I have one weekend a month where I'm home, that's okay. I'm good with that. I feel like that's what I should be doing. But and of course I'm home during the week, so that's good. A lot of parents are at their job during the day, so there's it's a trade-off, I guess. I hate being gone from my family on the weekends. My daughter now is getting to where she recognizes more and more things and recognizes when I'm leaving the house, and it's going to get harder and harder. And I remember one time traveling with Nate, and his daughter was probably 5 years old, and she just burst out crying when we were leaving, and it broke my heart then. So I know that's coming. I can't remember. There was another part of your question, I think. Did I answer it? I can't. Yeah. So we're still figuring out like a system, and it's tough. It's tough because this is my job and my profession, so I have to work and have to go do it. But at the same time, I got to balance being at home and what's worth it, Yeah. So, and I'll say this too. It is tougher, in my opinion, for women in comedy because as far as life support, I'm sure you guys have talked about this, the vast majority are men. So when I took that stand-up comedy class, it was all guys. It was a male teacher. Now, Rick's great no matter who you are, but I go to these open mics or I go to these other comedy shows, and it's just predominantly guys. So there's a much better chance you're going to find somebody in that group that you can lean on and have laugh support. So it's tough for women, I know, because there's so much fewer female comedians out there. So if you find a good friend, you got to really lean on her.
Yeah.
If only I could find one. No.
Just one good friend. Where could one be? I'll tell you, I sent, talk about you doing shows with Leanne. I sent her a message one time, and I told Michele, I was like, I got to get Brian's phone number because he's just going and growing and growing and growing. And you'll soon be that guy that if you do send a message on Messenger, it's like, I'm sorry, my manager's weeding this out, the crazies. But I sent a message to Leanne And I was like, I try to send encouraging messages. I'm not good at a lot of things, but I feel like that's like one of my gifts that God gave me is I was born to be a cheerleader. I love cheering people on. And so I sent Leanne a message, and it was just like saying, for somebody like me, just along with what you just said, is that I don't get to see a lot of role models, a lot of people that are doing what I do the way I want to do it, that are thriving, that are getting the opportunities and those kind of things. And so I sent her a message on like the messenger. I don't think she ever saw it, but I went back and read it later, and I was like, my opening line sounded psycho. So I kind of, and it was something like I think I was trying to be funny, but it wasn't. It was just weird. And so anyway, you may find out later on that she literally has security watching out for me or something in the background.
Oh yeah, she knows.
It is.
She does.
Yeah.
About you often.
I bet, yeah. But it really is like she is somebody in the area that is, as far as a female goes, is a pretty good example of just being who you are, doing what you do, and not compromising for success. And she's been very successful. So it's super cool that you've, formed that relationship with her. As far as I know, you say you don't like to give a lot of advice, but I know most of our guests, if you ask if there's a piece of advice that someone's given them along the way that they continue, most of the time there is kind of a little bit of something that somebody says, yeah, this is kind of what I always do. So can you think of anything that maybe one piece of advice someone gave you that you're like, yeah, I'm glad I learned that and I still do that to this day?
Let me think about that. I'm sure there is. Well, one thing that this isn't quite what you're asking, but a comedian named Greg Warren told me one time that he said, I've been in this business long enough to know that the highs aren't as high as you think they are, and the lows aren't as low as you think they are. He said, I've had things happen in my career where I think this is going to make my career. And he said, it turns out it really didn't. And he said, I've had some bad experiences and think I'm done for, and the lows aren't as low either. So that is good advice, even in life, just to remember that, this too shall pass. And if you stick with it long enough, the highs, you just learn that nothing is as extreme as you might think it is in the moment. I've had so much good advice. Rick Roberts really taught me early on that clean comedy opens so many more doors to do it. And, you shouldn't just be striving to do church shows for the money, but most comedians can't do church clean. And if you can, there's money to be made there. Corporates, Rick does mostly corporates.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so many more doors. And even if your goal is to get on television, you got to be clean to do late night stand-up comedy. So it really, it pays to be clean. That's for sure. I would have been clean anyway, because that's just who I am. But it's, that's some advice Rick gave to his class, and some people heeded it. Some people didn't. Nate said that someone told him, he said he read a book once that said, I think it was Elvis Presley's manager or something, that said, who I think was a crook, now I think about it, but this might not be good advice, but whenever you feel comfortable, it's time for a change. And Nate said he was doing so well in New York that he was like, I need to shake things up. And that's when he moved to LA, because he'd done everything really he wanted to do in New York, and he needed to push it a little bit. So that's a good advice too, to get out of your comfort zone. And I don't think I've ever felt comfortable enough to move on yet, but one of these days I'm going to feel comfortable, and then I'm going to have to shake it up.
Have a second kid.
Well, that's true. I mean, I got married at 48 and a baby at 50, so I guess I am shaking it up, aren't I?
Just a little.
Yeah.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for being with us today. It is an absolute honor to have you on. We definitely want our listeners to be checking you out. You can find Brian on Facebook. It's Brian Bates Comedy on Facebook. And then you can also find Brian on the world's slowest ticker scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Okay, BrianBatesComedy.com. Instagram and Twitter is Brian Bates Comic. And his YouTube channel is B Batesification 1. That's the YouTube channel. What's the Batesification, Brian? Can you tell us about that real quick before we close out?
I can't. I don't even know why that is. I feel like here's why I think that is. I think I'd created a YouTube channel like a long time ago with B Bates or Brian Bates or whatever. And then when I try to, I don't even remember it. And then when I try to create it again, like they're like, nope, there's already, an account for that. And I couldn't remember it. So I don't even remember creating B Basification 1, which is kind of crazy. That means there's already a B Basification out there. But so I have no idea why that is.
So my son, whenever Gmail first came out, everybody had email and other whatever word or something. I don't know what it was. And I had to have a Gmail for something. And so I go to my 8-year-old kid and go, can you make mommy a Gmail? I don't even know what this is, or it'll just go away like all the other ones. I don't care what you do. So my Gmail is JuneMarieMayBug@gmail.com because I thought it was, so that's much worse than Batesification. So I think, it's all right. It's all right.
So if you want to send June an email.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never really even thought it was bad until now, June, but you're letting me know that you have plenty worse. Thank you.
No, I said it's better. It's much better than mine.
No, you said yours was even worse. That's how you worded it.
Well, it's not. It's not that this is recorded. No one's going back and listening and seeing who was right or wrong in this. But I say we just go ahead and close this episode out before Michele agrees with you and gets on your side, Brian, because she always agrees with the guest above me.
Of course. And this is going to be worldwide, just so you get a little shot of our map. We're all over the place. So everyone now, June, knows your email and how worse.
And they know that I lie. So that's just for my junk mail. I know, Brian, we're going to close this out because we just showed you the amazing technology capabilities of the Laugh Support podcast with that amazing graphic map that Michele has where she colors in every time we get a new listener in different parts of the world and different parts of the country.
So if you know anybody in Maine or New Hampshire or Vermont, have them listen, or even Mississippi. Mississippi's not filled in. Tell your fans. Come on, people.
Yes.
We want America to be covered in color.
There you go. Well, Brian, we thank you so much for being on the show. Guys, you can listen to the Laugh Support podcast on all major podcast platforms. And if you would like to watch this episode and see Michele's amazing map, you can watch the Laugh Support podcast on YouTube, on the Creative Motion Network, on Roku TV. And you can also find our podcast on Vimeo. So as I always close out, Jesus and Junebug loves you. And Michele, please don't tell me you have another corny joke to end this episode. I don't think I can take another.
But too bad. You get to listen to this one. How does a chemist freshen her breath? What? With experiments. Da-da-da. Thanks for listening.
No.
Have a great day.